So last week I had to do one of the most painful things I've ever had to do. I had to put Shadow, my dog, down, and it was so painful, emotional, all the things. Shadow was a rock in my life for a really long time. I've had him for over 11 years, and he saw me go through a lot of things personally and professionally, and he was always there for me unconditionally. And a lot of people would talk to me over these last few months when I knew the time was coming and said, there's nothing that you can do to prepare yourself for the agony, the emotion, the heartbreak that's going to occur when the day comes when you have to put Shadow down. So I adopted Shadow when he was about 2 years old. For those of you who knew Shadow or spent time with him, you knew that he was the sweetest dog in the world, loved humans, not a harmful bone in his body. He loved bully sticks, loved squeaky toys, was the life of the party, always wanted people to know that he was there. And he was always there for me. He was known for that, for having a legendary snaggletooth that popped out of his mouth and was just the sweetest dog in the world. And people really, really loved him. And when I adopted him, he had been a shelter dog. He was somebody that was found, I believe, at a Subway restaurant. And his original name was Subway. And then he got taken to a shelter. And then somebody had adopted him for a short time after that. And then I got him when that person could no longer take care of him. And Shadow was a staple in my life for a really long time, like I've said. And it's just been one of the most painful experiences of my life because there's been a lot of regret. I think I was a good pet parent to Shadow. I definitely took care of him, made sure he was fed, spent time with him, etc. But like early on in my career, when I had Shadow, there was a lot of times where I wasn't around. I wasn't home. So I was super thankful to have a lot of help along the way that took care of Shadow. When I would travel for work or I'd be back to back with training clients, I always had help for Shadow when I wasn't around. And now looking back at the fact that I wasn't able to be there during those times, of course, it's natural to feel a bit more regret and that I shouldn't have necessarily, put as much emphasis on my career at that time. And that said, I think it's also hard because when you're in the prime of your career and in the prime of building a business, you kind of have to, put forth a lot of energy and effort into that to be able to grow the thing so that you can provide better for your pets, your loved ones, etc. But that's still something that I've been like kind of battling with is that I wish I had spent, a bit more time with him when I could. But that said, we had a great life together. I enjoyed taking him on runs with me. I enjoyed taking him to the dog park. I enjoyed taking him to the beach. I've enjoyed taking him on various play dates. I've enjoyed taking him on hikes. I've enjoyed just watching him, grow up as a dog. And there's so many memories of us together. Every time I go through the pictures of us, I mean, it's hard not to shed a tear because of all the great memories that we had together. And Shadow taught me a lot. He taught me the importance of unconditional love. He taught me the importance of just smiling. And even though like maybe life didn't seem to be that great, he taught me the importance of just being thankful for the little things. I mean, he would chew on these toys and these bones that were just so disgusting that I wouldn't give to my worst enemy, right? And he always had a smile on his face. And he touched the lives and the hearts of so many people. And when um, and so a few years ago, it was I think at the beginning of 2023, he started to urinate a lot. He started to drink a lot of water, like way more than normal. And I remember calling my vet and I said, "Hey, I think there's something going on with Shadow. There's something going on with his health. He's having these frequent urinations. He's just really looks like he's having a hard time." Took him into the vet. I believe this was March 2023. And I got like the worst news possible. My vet called me emotional, was like, "Doug, I got some really, really bad news. We found a tumor in Shadow's liver and it's cancerous." And of course, I completely lose it emotionally. And I'm like, "So what's the deal?" And she's like, "He may have like 4 to 6 months left to live." This is back in 2023. And during that time, I just focused all of my, or a lot of my energy and attention on Shadow. And I said, all right, what are some things that we can do to make the most of this time that we have left together? And so took him to the beach, took him to a dog only ice cream place because he loved like the puppuccinos from Starbucks. He just loved food in general. Every time he I was eating dinner, he would beg for food, and honestly, I'm to blame for that because I'm somebody that at the beginning I gave him human food a lot, and so he got used to that. And as a result, whenever I would be eating, he'd be begging for food. So took him to the beach, took him to this ice cream spot, just spent a lot more time with him and just reminisced about the memories we had built up until that time because I was banking on him dying, sometime between, March when I got the diagnosis and September because the vet had given me 4 to 6 months from that time. And Shadow's a fighter. People who know Shadow know he's a survivor. He's been through a lot. Again, was a dog who was in a shelter, was somebody that was homeless, was on like the streets early on, and he's just survived a lot. And so as time went on, I noticed his energy not really change that much, but he started to have these seizures. He would get me up in the middle of the night and just collapse. And it was one of the most horrific things I've ever witnessed was watching my dog have a seizure. It was so painful because I knew that there was nothing I can do. I had no idea what was going on at the beginning, but later found out he was having seizures. So we got him some medication for that. And then his quality of life didn't really deteriorate. He actually was, it seemed like making some progress. He wasn't drinking as much water. I was like, what's going on here? Everything kind of seems a bit normal. And he also had really bad separation anxiety. So whenever I would leave him at home or if he was by himself for more than a few hours, he would just bark and bark and bark. And that was just because he, I think, had such crazy abandonment issues from the way he grew up and being abandoned when he was a puppy before I got him, that we ended up having to get him some holistic like anxiety treats. And then, of course, being the dog that he is, he jumped up on the counter and ate this entire bag of treats. And we had to take him to the pet ER to have his like stomach essentially pumped so that they could get the poisonous amount of, I think it was tryptophan or something, out of his system, so that again that wouldn't have killed him. So again, he survived that. He's now surviving this cancer. He's making his way with the seizures, figuring that out, and then he kind of remained even keel for a bit. Didn't really see anything different other than what had already happened, and he I thought was just getting kind of better, but I knew at the end of the day that the vet had given me this time frame of how much longer he was supposed to live, and he had exceeded that. So I'm like, okay, like maybe the cancer's gone, maybe he's doing better, and we'll just see how it goes. And then last winter, like the end of 2024, I started to really see his health kind of decline a bit. I saw him losing a bunch of weight that was kind of unexplainable. I started to see him act different behaviorally that I didn't experience before, where it just seemed like things were a bit off. And he started to have like some incontinence issues where he was frequently like, urinating on the carpet and just doing things that were completely out of the ordinary. And so I contacted my vet and kept her in the loop as to what was going on. She said to monitor it, etc. And then they had thought that he may have had Cushing's disease, but it turns out he wouldn't like have to urinate like during the night. Like he could hold his bladder for a good like 12 hours at a time, like during the night while we slept. So I was like, it's probably not Cushing's disease, because if it was and he really couldn't control his bladder, then he would be going in the middle of the night as well. And then about a few weeks ago, I noticed that the urination was getting worse, and I was having to spend like way more time with him to monitor to make sure that he wasn't going to the bathroom in our place. And just something in my gut like told me that there was something off, because you could just tell that if you look at the back of him, he was getting a little bit more narrow. He was eating food like crazy, and not just eating it like crazy, but the how fast he would eat and drink water was wild. I mean, just guzzling down food and water. And it just caused me to be a little bit concerned. And earlier last week, we had picked him up after we returned from Vegas. And I could just tell by looking at him that something was off. And I just knew in my gut that we were kind of reaching the end. And I got to say, like over the last few months, I didn't resent Shadow. I love Shadow so much, and it pains me that he's not here. But I think I was upset that there was just nothing I could do to really keep him, alive and living a good quality of life. There's nothing I could do to get him to be back to the way he was. And I grappled with that, over the last couple months. And it was just really, really painful, like watching my dog's health deteriorate right before my eyes over the last 6 months was really sad, because Shadow had been, like I said, a rock in my life, a foundation in my life for well over a decade. And he was the best dog, never hurt a soul. People loved him, always happy to see you, always like wanted people to know that he was right there, just full of spunk, goofy, just people really, really loved him. And so I believe it was last Wednesday morning. I had kind of gotten up and I just noticed something was a bit off. He came over and just laid down in a spot that he didn't really lay down in normally. And I smelled this smell, and he had pooped like all over my clothes that were kind of sitting on the floor. And then I cleaned that up, and then I walked downstairs and he had pooped all over the carpet. And I was obviously a little annoyed, if I'm being honest. Like, man, like I got to throw these clothes away, and why do you have to do this? Like we've had to put diapers on him for the last several months to make sure that he doesn't pee in the carpet, because he just was doing it so much that we had to put diapers on him to prevent him from essentially ruining the carpet. And so I went down and started to clean up the poop downstairs, and I looked at my fiance Erica. I said, "Listen, like there's something that feels off. Like I'm just not in a good headspace." And it's because I knew that like the end was really near with Shadow. I said, I got to call the vet. I need to see what's going on here, because I can't keep like living like this in fear of his health. And I don't know if this quality of life is the best for him. And so take him up to the vet Wednesday morning, and he had lost more weight. And she grabbed like his liver, and you could just hear this yelp from him, and you could just tell he was in a lot of pain. And she said, "Doug, I think it's time. I think it's time to put him down." And of course, I lose it again. I bawl my eyes out, and I said, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Yeah, like his liver is inflamed, and it's the cancer that's causing all of these symptoms that you're experiencing with him." So of course, I'm trying to do everything I possibly can to not do that, or to like, figure out a way that if I do this, I can walk away with peace, knowing that I did the right thing. And so I said to her, I said, "Well, where do we go from here?" She's like, "Well, I can do an x-ray just to essentially prove what I'm telling you, but the writing's on the wall." And I said, "Well, what would you do if you're in my situation?" She's like, "Let's just do the x-ray." So she does the x-ray, and I leave Shadow there while that's getting done, because I had a few personal training clients to train. And I called just to check to see if the x-ray had been done. And they said, the vet will call you, wants to talk to you in person, not on the phone. And I just knew when I got that news that it was bad. And so went to the vet and essentially said to her, I said, "Just shoot me straight. What's going on?" And she's like, "It's not good." And she showed me the x-ray, and the tumor that was in his liver had expanded. It was almost like the size of a small baseball glove that was like kind of wedged in his stomach. And again, I lost it. And that day, we put Shadow down. And the emotions of all of that were incredibly hard to describe unless you've been through something like that. And the hardest thing about it was he still had like energy. He was still like walking around and smiling and barking. And it was just like, I just was grappling with like, why do I have to do this? And I remember a few years ago, I was having coffee with Andrew Huberman, and it was the summer after Shadow had gotten diagnosed with cancer. And he said something to me that has stuck with me for the last several months. He said to me was like, the last phase of being a good like dog owner is putting them down before they're in too much pain. And I thought about that a lot. And I just thought, man, it'd be really selfish of you, Doug, to keep him around, given what you know he has going on. And I just can't, there's no words that I can use to describe the experience and all the emotions at that time. went to the back where they kind of do these sorts of operations, and um, held him, and they injected him with something that sedated him, and his eyes were closed. He was still living, and I just remember holding him and just saying, "Man, like I'm really gonna miss you, and I love you so much." And I gave him a kiss, and they gave him the whatever you call it that stops his heart, and that was it. And I just remember getting up and just crying like crazy, and just letting it all out because I loved Shadow so much. And with love, there was a lot of anger probably towards myself at not spending as much time with him as I could have at various points of his life and traveling a lot. And, just being a little bit bitter about the situation, I guess, given the fact that there was nothing I could do. And it's just a hard lesson in life that I wish I would have maximized every single moment with him, because there were certainly times where, again, people were caring for him and taking care of him when I was away and I was working. And I wish I would have spent more time with him. And so it's been tough, obviously over the last like 5 days. I'm much better today than I was, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like those days, again, looking at pictures, I would bawl my eyes out, looking at his bed, toys, etc. It was really painful and it was tough. And so I wanted to record this video just as something different. There was no plan. I had no script, no bullet points, other than just to share these emotions and my feelings about the situation, so that maybe this inspires you. Maybe you're somebody who can relate to this. Maybe you're somebody that has a dog right now, or something in your life that you want to spend more time with, so you don't learn this lesson a bit late like I did. So I want to use this video to celebrate Shadow's life and to help other people that are going through a similar situation. So RIP Shadow, thank you so much for all the memories, and I love you dearly.